world was young, the mountains green, no stain yet on the moon was seen.
Then with a crash came a great ringing shout. Ra, boom, ra.
3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie.
It's talking about Tolkien, Ben. I was concerned that you were going out of town this week for some work thing. I think I confused you with Momo, because I know she's going out of town for some work thing. Yeah, I was concerned we were only going to talk about American Gods this week, and that bummed me out. So
I'm glad I could help. No, I'm going only for the weekend. I'm going Friday. I'm coming back Saturday on a clandestine mission to try to acquire material for a bonus episode.
oh my God. You're going to force your mom to read The Hobbit.
This has nothing to do with my family.
Oh my God.
I'll see my family, but this has nothing to do with my family.
Are we going to be reading old Ben writing?
That has nothing to do with me.
What?
You literally can't guess because I don't even think you know enough about, we'll say, the topic.
It's so mysterious.
Yeah, it is. It could turn into nothing, and if it turns into nothing, I promise I'll tell you what it was, but I gotta hope.
Okay.
And I think something good's gonna happen.
We have... All right. I guess we'll get on to the Shadow of the Past, in which I took 3.5 pages of notes.
Jesus, okay. Do you want to do the summary, or would you like me to? I always write one down, but I always enjoy yours.
I'll do the summary. So, this is chapter 2, Shadow of the Past. As you may have recalled, Bilbo threatened to gut Gandalf like a fish, but ultimately he gave up the ring and disappeared into the night. And now Frodo is a man in Hobbit terms. That's 33. And he's now the man of the house.
That's kind of the end of last chapter. A lot of time has passed since that.
Yeah, and now we just fast forward to Frodo's 50s. Like 17 plus years.
It has been exactly 17 years. He has turned 50.
Okay.
This is the spring of his 50th year.
Oh, yes, I have that in my notes. He's close to hitting 50, and I wrote, I did not remember that. In fact,
I did, but I don't talk about it because people don't get it.
He doesn't look a day over, let's say, 33.
Let's say exactly 33.
Exactly 33. It's like he stopped aging around 33 for some weird reason.
Around the very night Bilbo left.
I also love that they now call him Bilbo Mad Baggins.
I do like that. There is a folk legend that springs up about Bilbo that he would vanish into explosions and come back with piles of gold. And that legend persisted for an age, long after anyone had forgotten that the real Bilbo existed. 1,000 years from now, they're still talking about Mad Baggins.
Though some people think that maybe he fell into a river or a pool of water or something and he died and it's all Gandalf's fault. But people don't remember that legend. It's less of a tale, you know?
That would be my mom. That's how my mom talks. My mom to this day insists anytime Head Full of Ghosts comes up or Paul Tremblay, she's like, that little girl killed that family. She knew what she was doing. She poisoned them all and she blamed it on the older sister. That's how my mom talks.
And she doesn't listen to this podcast, so you can talk about your mom and you'll never hear about it. So Frodo has gotten into some adventuring. Not outside the Shire, but he goes pretty far. Sometimes with his close friends, Merry and Scottie Pippen, and sometimes just by himself.
But you've forgotten about his other close friend that we all remember, Fatty Bolger.
Yes.
Because Tolkien body shames a lot more than I remember.
I wasn't going to mention it this time, but yes. So, a quick question for you. What's like the timeline for the writing? I know The Hobbit was written long before The Lord of the Rings, but were the three Lord of the Ring books written like one after the other, boom, 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 or?
Yeah, pretty much all at once.
Okay.
The decision to split them into 3 books came after the full manuscript was done.
Okay, that was my other question. Whether or not it was just one big story and he diced it up into smaller chunks. Like visionary George Lucas said he did with the original Star Wars. So Frodo might be visiting some elves too on these little escapades. Keep that in the back of your pocket. And this is where they mention that there's some. It's not really highlighted in great detail, but there's some strange people hanging around the Shire these days. Just sometimes people you wouldn't expect to be there. And also, they do mention the elves sometimes they head west and they're never seen again. So, the Grey Havens, that's where they set sail for the west, is that right?
Yeah, that's the port where the ships go to Valinor. Yeah.
So, like, where are they in relation to the Shire?
Well, if you consult the map at the front of your book.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so the Grey Havens are about, I'd say about 300 miles west of the Shire.
Wow. Damn. So why do the elves not know about the Shire then?
They do, they just don't care. I mean, the
Okay.
ones that pass through it obviously know it's there.
What about why do evil forces not know about it until now? Does Sauron want to dominate the elves that are leaving? Like, does he have a plan for? Okay, I'm going to get that ring back, and then I'm gonna somehow dominate the Westlands.
I think he wants Middle Earth. He is
Okay, and
satisfied with Middle Earth. He knows he's not, if the elves make it to Valinor, he knows he's never going to be able to take Valinor. But he wants Middle Earth. So I
okay,
think what you have to notice if you look at the map, the bulk of the important stuff happens in the southeast. So you can kind of think of Gondor as being maybe like, if we're thinking medieval times, you can kind of think of this whole area where Gondor is, and then Mordor even, as maybe like Mediterranean almost. So like this is where all the major cities are. Most humans don't live in Middle Earth. Most humans live east and south. Harad is the southern kingdom, and the east. It might be given a name, but almost always they're referred to as Easterlings. There might be many nations to the east.
oh, so
And
Middle Earth doesn't incorporate those two
it,
areas then.
I think it technically does, but almost always when we refer to Middle Earth, we're referring to just this portion of it.
Do elves exist in those far reaches?
Yes, probably. Though those would be elves who we got into this a bit in The Hobbit, the different kinds of elves. We'll get into this again later on, but basically there are the original elves who awoke, and then eventually the gods found them and they said, hey, you'd be a lot safer if you came over to our kingdom across the ocean. And some elves heeded the call. Not all of them made it the whole way. A lot of them stopped and found places they liked in between. Some of them went and came back. Some of them never went at all. Likely the ones in the east and the south, if they are there, would be those ones who never went at all. And
Okay.
so they are usually called dark elves.
Ah, Dritz Durden.
That's kind of where it comes from. And the negative connotation with dark elves kind of comes from that too, because the reason they are separated into like light and dark is they never saw the light of the two trees Valinor, which is a whole Silmarillion thing. We'll get into it eventually. But basically, they didn't listen to the gods. So the elves that do listen to the gods view that as, blasphemous almost. Like you're not wise. You did an immoral thing and not listening to the gods.
So what like barrier, what land barrier or whatever separates Middle Earth from those other places?
You can walk it. It's mostly, I would say, let me see. The east, I think, is really easy to get to. Harad, I don't know if I don't think there's a sea.
No, it doesn't look like it. Why would Sauron not also want those places?
He does, and he has a lot of control over them. Actually,
Oh,
they fight for him. I mean, they're in the movies.
okay. Anyway, elves are going to the Grey Havens and they're traveling through the Shire to do it. And there's also some other weird people hanging around the Shire.
There's also dwarf refugees coming through.
Refugees from what?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? That's what Frodo's trying to find out. Is he's talking to these elves and he's talking to these dwarves.
Ben, the war is over. We won. You remember there was a battle? There were 5 armies. Boom. We got them all. No more goblins in them there mountains.
Well,
It was
no more
over.
goblins in the literal one and only Lonely Mountain.
There were no goblins in the Misty Mountains, or less of them, enough so that they were safe to travel across. So,
Well, Frodo specifically finds out that the orcs are returning in greater
yeah.
numbers. There are trolls wandering about.
And they're not stupid asshole trolls named Bill anymore. They're dangerous. I like that he put that out. They've got weapons and they're not stupid anymore.
Well,
You're not going to
yeah.
be tricking these with dumb riddles or infighting, I guess.
Yeah, something seems to be making them smart and giving them a lot of weapons.
Are they smarter?
They are. That's a tough question. Are they smarter, or is Sauron commanding them to act more tactically? That I don't really know the answer to.
Okay.
It is certainly within the realm of a great Maiar's powers, or a great Maya's power, Maya's the singular, to sort of uplift beasts and such. And so Sauron could possibly do that, but he could also use his spiritual power to dominate their will and tell them what to do. And to the outside observer, that would mean they're acting much more intelligent, even if internally they are not. Like, I don't know if they're actually sitting down wondering about the nature of existence. Like, are the colors I see the same colors that you see? Like, but they are fighting pretty good.
Yeah, they're not failing to eat 13 captured dwarves.
No, they kill the dwarves first.
Yeah, exactly. They're not being defeated by the sun.
A lot of this is closing in around the Shire, like you said.
Yeah, strange things happening in the world. Gandalf hasn't been around in a while either. It's also
Well, I mean, it's been 17 years. For the first
he showed
I
up
want to
every
say,
now and
yeah,
then.
for the first 8 years, he was around a lot. Like, he was checking in every while, asking really invasive questions about Frodo's health, checking his blood pressure, doing his blood work,
taking
making
some blood samples, measuring his midichlorians.
He was analyzing the telomeres, trying to see if they were shrinking, and then he would be like, and go away again.
Yeah, but he hasn't shown up in a little while.
It's been 9 years
Yeah.
since Frodo last saw Gandalf, and he's beginning to wonder if Gandalf has tired of hobbits.
Yeah, might never see Gandalf again.
Well, Pipeweed's kind of addictive. You'll probably see him again.
Yeah, see, I wrote here, dwarves who are much cooler and aren't running from their problems like cowards are also on the road in unusual number.
That's kind of valid. I mean, they are literally running from their problems, but not to the extent that the elves...
They're not going to another world.
Yeah, not to the extent that the elves are capable of running from their problems.
And some of these dwarves are speaking of, quote, the enemy and of the land of Mordor. And I'm sure this won't come up again. It sounds like something just to spice up this happy-go-lucky adventure, like how the Necromancer was spicing up the Hobbit. Sure, that's not important detail.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe in a future book we'll explore Mordor. but
Oh, and the evil in Mirkwood has reappeared in Mordor. That's unfortunate.
yeah, it's the same guy. We figured that out, as was always intended.
Exactly. Always intended. As was discussed in our dissection of the Hobbit, he planned out this entire thing 20 years in advance or whatever, however
He
long it
is
was.
so committed to the retcon. There is so much, like, actually, if you think about it, it really does make sense that Gollum was a weird lake monster. But how did he know? How did a weird lake monster know all those riddles?
From a certain point of view, Anakin. I mean Luke. I mean
Because he was
Ben.
he was a hobbit. He was like a hobbit all along.
Yes, all along, he definitely wasn't a lake monster, which is exactly what I envisioned when I first read The Hobbit.
He
He was
definitely was
always a
not
golem.
much larger than Bilbo with giant glowing eyes.
And
we
and we
caught you. We caught you, Tolkien.
maybe that was Bilbo's fault too.
Oh, he was trying to make him seem more monstrous.
Exactly.
Like he was trying to make Bomber seem fatter.
Yeah, exactly.
That
exactly.
could be. You could be onto something.
He doesn't want you to think like, I stole this ring from another hobbit. No, there's this lake monster. He was like, let's say 7 feet tall. Is that 7 foot tall lake monster with glowing eyes? Let's do that.
I felt
defeated
very
that.
threatened.
I pulled out Sting and said I was going to have to stand my ground.
Whatever means of escape I used were justified by the circumstances. Gandalf.
Yeah, Gandalf. So
Hater.
So we also talked about this. There's another weird thing up north. A walking tree.
Yeah. This is so. There's a scene at the beginning of the chapter where Sam is just sitting in a pub talking to some random old guy who's just like, he's a proper hobbit. He's like, you stay in your village, you farm your village, you die, you're buried in your village to fertilize the next crop. That's what a hobbit should do. You get your head out of the clouds with all these elves and your trees and your walking trees. And Sam's like, but I did it. Or my friend, a friend of a friend, my friend's cousin's brother saw an elm tree walking.
And Sandy Man is like, no, he didn't. And even if he did, fake news. This is fake news.
So, yeah, I mean, Ent wife, too much pipe weed? What's the deal?
I don't know. It's
Neither does Tolkien. Neither does Tolkien.
It was just one of those rumors. It was one of those D&D rumors that you give to your players to spice things up, but then they take it way too far, and suddenly they're off on an adventure looking for a walking tree that doesn't exist.
Oh, yeah, that would happen. No, we'll talk more about this when we properly get to Treebeard, but Tolkien did get letters about like what happened to the Entwives, and he said that he doesn't know. And
Stop asking.
From his perspective, he's maintaining the illusion here that like he is just a translator of the Red Book of Westmarch. He didn't, he's not the author, but he does go on to say that when he was, in all seriousness, when he was writing the Ents, he was writing the chapter where they meet Treebeard, and the Ents just sort of popped into his head. He describes it as almost an act of like divine inspiration. Like he did not really know where they came from. He just wrote them and he liked them and he kept it.
God looked down from his heavens and went, Ents.
Treebeard. That sounds like something God would do. Like, if you read the Bibles, like he does pop up really randomly to be like, hey, I need you to build a boat. It's going to rain a lot.
Treebeard.
Need you to build a boat. But yeah, he said they popped into his head. They weren't really part of this grand plan. And he worked him in kind of as best as he could. But I think he honestly, when he says he doesn't know what happened to the Entwives, he really means like, I don't think I have solved that one yet. It wasn't necessary to this tale. He did say that he thinks they probably did not find them in the end. That the Ents are probably going to go extinct.
Wow. If only we had like magic rings that could preserve. Nah, that's crazy.
Well, they don't work after the One Ring's destroyed.
They probably should have made a controller ring that wasn't made of evil. They could, you know what? Fuck you guys.
Who do you think taught them how to make rings?
Nate.
So the guy who taught them how to make rings, Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, who never asked for anything in return.
Oh, that sounds like a nice guy.
Yeah, he was a really nice guy. And they didn't really know you could make a master ring. He neglected that part.
Oh, I'm sure that was coming later. I'm sure he was going to eventually let them in on that secret, you know?
Yeah, but then he mysteriously disappeared for a while and a dark fortress rose in the east of Mordor. And somebody was really hammering about a ring in there for like a long time.
I'm sure Anatar was captured and was forced to spill his secrets to that Dark Lord. And poor Anatar. Hashtag justice for Anatar, right?
Yeah. I mean, we should find him. We could be in danger. Yeah.
Maybe he can help us make some more rings after this whole business is over.
You know who we should get to help us with this One Ring problem? Anatar. Maybe he could think of some way to unforge this ring. Somebody give him a call.
There you go.
No, they figured it out.
So there's also one other thing. Sam and the Sandy Man over here are talking, and some folk are being turned away at the border. Who is turning them away? Who is being turned away? Does the Shire have a better border security system than the United States? Is what I'm trying to ask.
I think this is one of those details Tolkien throws in and he doesn't really think about, because in the beginning he described them as having a sheriff, and the sheriff appoints a couple of dudes
that a bunch of hobbits are like, we're turning you away at the border because the next question is, you and what army? And the follow-up response is, have a nice day, and just walking away very casually.
It's distinctly possible that the hobbits do have guards, that
built a wall.
They could be assisted by the humans that live nearby, like in Bree. And
they built a wall and they made Bree pay for it.
Yeah, but they built a wall, but it's only like chest high to an adult.
That's what I was going to say. It's more of an inconvenience. You have to like stretch one leg really tall over it, and then
only the most flexible can get through. No. It's possible they get help from the humans, but realistically, what's actually keeping away the people that would kill the hobbits are the Dunedain, the Rangers. Gandalf set them to protecting the Shire while he's trying to figure out what's going on.
How many of them are there?
Unclear.
Do they do any more in the War of the Ring besides Aragorn, obviously?
Not a ton. I think they are mostly occupied. I think they're deployed in like a defensive capacity, but I think even they're overwhelmed by the end.
Damn. Okay. So, now after all that, we're talking about Gandalf. When he does appear, he's always appearing around dusk and leaving before dawn and never talking about what he's doing. And he shows up and he mentions...
And it's funny because the hobbits do correctly clock that as like, kind of seems like you're selling him drugs, Frodo. Are you dealing in wizard drugs now? Is that where the Baggins get their money? Is it what we thought it was gold hidden in those walls, but maybe it was white gold, okay?
Yeah, well, there's no law against it. What are you going to do? Send your sheriff and his deputies? I own the police. I've got piles of gold and Bag End, buddy.
I would love to hear Frodo say, I own the police.
So, he shows up. This is where he mentioned those lesser rings that were...
essays in the craft.
Essay to the craft, yeah. And over time, the rings, they preserve you, but they wear you out.
Yeah, let's focus in. So once Gandalf shows up, the whole chapter is pretty much a lore dump.
Yes.
And we're going to get into a
Still
lot.
better than American Gods.
You can tell what time we recorded this. So this is a big lore dump, and we're going to get into a lot of it. If it hasn't been made clear already, this is a spoilery podcast. We're kind of assuming people have at least seen the movies.
Kills Dumbledore.
He does. It's been years. This book has been out for almost 100 years now.
Oh my god.
I don't think it's quite that long. Maybe like 70.
Yeah, I think 70. I think it came out in the 50s.
Yeah. So, you've had your chance. If you're listening to this podcast, I would hope you have either already read the chapter, you're reading along with us, or you've at least seen the movies, or you don't care and you don't want to read the books and you just want to know what happens because they're kind of boring, but you're curious. So, with that in mind, we do get some details here. One of the biggest questions is, what do the rings actually do? And it is vague, but it is more explained here than it ever is in the movie. So Gandalf sits down and he tells Frodo, there's a bunch of magic rings. Elven rings. You call them magic rings. They're all elven rings. And in Lord of the Rings, I do notice that the elves are portrayed as much closer to like the kind of spiritual or magical beings they're portrayed in Norse mythology. Like, they're very next level. So the elven rings are not to be, they're very dangerous to mortals, even the essays in the craft, even the junk ones. Now, if you get an essay in the craft, you're going to get a ring that's maybe a little too powerful for you, but you'll be okay. If you get a lesser ring, now these lesser rings, these are the 9 rings given to mortal men doomed to die.
Wow. Okay, I was going to ask what a lesser ring was, and wow, guys.
The 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, and the 3 for the elf lords under the sky.
Are the 3 for the elf lords lesser rings? I thought those were great rings.
Oh, you're right. No, sorry. I was caught up in the poem.
It was just us loser men and loser dwarves that get to have the bullshit prize. Thanks, guys.
These lesser rings are when Anatar, who is Sauron, spoilers.
What? What?
When Sauron was teaching the elves how to make these rings, they were working together, and it was then that they forged the lesser rings. They got really close to perfecting the craft. And after the forging of the lesser rings, the ones that would go to the dwarves and men, Sauron leaves to forge his master ring.
Okay, did he not he didn't have them forge lesser rings for the elves though?
Well, they were all for the elves.
Oh. So he was like, forge these rings for yourself, and I'm going to disappear for a while. And they were like, these rings kind of suck compared to what we can actually make. So let's give these to the men and pretend like, these are a big deal, but really, fuck them. And same with the dwarves.
So here's what happens. The elves forge their 3 rings after he leaves. And now these are more powerful than anything else. The elves have kind of figured it out now, and they're getting their own creativity going. And with that, they forge the 3 greater rings. Sauron's master ring could control any ring forged with his method of ring making, basically. When he puts on the one ring, the elves realize they're tricked. They sense Sauron. I think they actually hear the thought, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, etc., etc. And hearing that, they are wise enough to take off their rings. Others work differently. The dwarves were created not by Iluvatar. They're not children of Iluvatar, and their minds work a little differently. They are, like I think I said in The Hobbit, they're kind of clockwork creatures. They're kind of like crafting machines brought to life. Iluvatar did adopt them, but their design, like he
But
gave
he
them.
doesn't love them as much as his real children.
No, he does, but they weren't designed by Iluvatar. They were designed by Aule, the Valar of craft and smithing, and so their minds work a little differently. They still have souls. They're still, people, but when they put on the rings, the ring can only enhance, and it does tend to enhance the negative traits of a person. But for a dwarf, because they're so connected to the act of crafting and mining and all these like productive tasks, it just throws them into overdrive.
Oh my god, it turned them into Minecraft players.
They delve perhaps
They
too
keep-
greedily and perhaps too
deep.
deep. And
okay. So
yes.
so that still worked out in Sauron's favor, because like now all the dwarves are led by greedy assholes.
Yeah, but it didn't, because his goal was that he would control them. And he does not control them. He just kind of made them self-destructive.
If he maybe built a big old mine, he could probably control them. Swear fealty to me, I'll let you in my big old mine.
It's kind of like if you wanted an army, and so you gave people a bunch of crack,
Hey,
and they
that
all
could
stayed
work.
up for like 72 hours straight, but they didn't show up to battle formations. That's kind of what Sauron's dealing with here.
But it sounds like he hit a home run with the men.
Men are just the right amount of
Awesome.
elf-like, but also deeply insecure, deeply afraid of death. And Tolkien even hints that men, it was Sauron and his master who convinced men to fear death. That originally we had some idea that it was like a release, a moving on to the next thing, but now we fear it is the end and only oblivion waits, and so we do anything for more life. And that is a theme that comes back again and again, because
When we really needed Jesus.
one of the ways Sauron corrupts Numenor is by making them jealous of the elves. Like, Numenorians live a long time, but a long time is nothing next to forever.
Why did Sauron not craft rings for the elves, though?
Well, I think he intended the elves to use some of these rings.
But then he murdered them and took them all back?
So the elves had all of these rings before
Okay.
Sauron gave them. When Sauron forged the One Ring, every ring was in elven possession. He forged the One Ring, they figured out what he did, and then he was like, shit, rallied an army and attacked the kingdom of Eregion and killed a bunch of elves and took as many of the rings as he could get.
Oh, okay. I actually, on my notes it said Eregion ? So you just answered that question for me.
There you go. But yes, so we have determined through the test of fire that it is the One Ring. Interestingly enough, this is something that I never thought about, but Tolkien shows the writing that is on the One Ring. And Frodo, in the movie, for some reason, Frodo says it's some form of Elvish, but I can't read it. But in the book, Frodo says, I cannot read the fiery letters. No, Gandalf said, but I can. The letters are Elvish, of an ancient mode, but the language is that of Mordor, which I will not utter here. But this, in the common tongue, is what is said close enough. One ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. If I'm not wrong, and I'm going to look this up for this episode, and you'll be hearing a quote of it at some point, but I think what Ian McKellen says is,
in the common tongue, it says, one ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all. And in the darkness, bind them.
that's a lot to write on a ring.
They used This is the language of Mordor, okay? One word in Mordor is like a sentence to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sauron should have written this in kanji or Chinese. He would have gotten a lot further. There's a 120 character limit on this ring, man. You can't just keep going.
So Gandalf has figured all this out, but he does mention Saruman, one of the wisest of the wise, is prideful, and he studies this magic ring thing, but Gandalf didn't want to go to him for some reason.
Well, he doesn't just study this magic ring thing. He's the only one who studies this magic ring thing, and if you start studying it, he's going to get mad.
Wow.
He's the ring guy.
That's my one thing. You can't take my thing. It's the thing that makes me unique, Gandalf.
So this is some interesting lore. We mentioned Aule, who created the dwarves. He's a smith. He's a god. He's a Valar, and he also has several Maiar who work under him, who learn from him, who assist him. And one of these Maiar was Sauron.
What?
And another of these Maiar was Saruman.
Huh.
Now, Aule is not evil. He's just a really bad judge of character.
Or maybe he's a bad tutor.
No, they're pretty good at the ring shit.
Oh, okay.
They learned that.
He just maybe shouldn't have taught them, like, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, he should have like had an Uncle Ben moment with them.
Yes. Yes.
And he was just like, but what if we made more rings? What if we got into necklaces, wrist accessories? Come on, guys.
That's where the money's at.
What about the leather cuff of power?
The leather cuff of power. The choker.
The choker of destiny.
So Gandalf mentions that the great evil has ignored the Shire for far too long, and he would come into the Shire and enslave all of them just to be an ass. So we gotta deal with this ring shit. And then what happens is in the movie, the Mines of Moria scenes where I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish that so do all who live in
Live
such
to see such times.
Yeah. What was the other one? At least 2 scenes were lifted from this chapter.
So Frodo, and this is going to be a recurring theme in the book. Frodo is a much stronger character than he is in the movies. In the movie, he's just kind of suffering, and his suffering increases to the point where he has to be carried up the mountain by Sam.
And he's kind of an asshole to poor old Sam because his biscuits were thrown off a cliff.
In the book, a lot of that doesn't happen. And in the book, Frodo is very saint-like. And he's tougher, to be honest. And this conversation with Gandalf goes a little differently. Like, he takes a firm tone with Gandalf. Gandalf is telling him, like, hey, you got this ring. It's from the Dark Lord. It's the most powerful ring in the world. And Frodo is like, how long have you known this? Did you know this before I took possession of the soul-eating ring, Gandalf? And Gandalf's like, okay, rude.
I suspected it most when Bilbo threatened to shank me the night that he gave it to you, but
I had a thought before that, but Saruman kind of talked me out of it. And then, I started to realize maybe we can't trust Saruman. I do want to mention one little thing. It is going to come up later in the books, but magic is subtle in these books. But one of the magical things that a lot of people don't notice on a first read, Saruman's voice is almost magical, if not magical. When people listen to Saruman, he has a way of getting in their head and convincing them he's right. It's not quite like any kind of psychic power or something, but he has this like hypnotic voice. And so I
don't know if it's the voice. I think it's the hips.
It's the hips. They don't lie. That's what gives him away. That's why Gandalf doesn't trust him, because his hips don't lie. If you focus on Saruman's hips, you're going to know the truth. And that's that, he makes a man want to speak Spanish. But Saruman has this voice. He has this way of getting in your head. And you can resist it. But you have to sort of be prepared to resist it, like hypnotism. If somebody just catches you and you just go along with it, you might not even know you got misdirected. But I think that is at least part of why Gandalf is so easily convinced. The gods gave them this task, and the gods made Saruman the leader, and Gandalf's going to respect that.
Because Saruman would have cried if he were not the leader.
That's kind of what happened.
I know all the ring lore. Oh, really? I was joking. Yeah. Are you serious? That happens?
So when they show up, Galadriel, and you got to keep in mind, a lot of these elves who have been to Valinor and come back, Galadriel's one of them, there's a solid chance that they knew Gandalf before he was Gandalf. And there's a solid chance that they knew Saruman before he was Saruman. And Galadriel doesn't particularly like Saruman. And Galadriel thinks that they're going to have this White Council of the Wise, which is made up of the wizards who are Maiar, who are angels.
Yeah, and I'm Saruman the White. It's called the White Council, so therefore I am the leader.
It's called the Council of the Wise. You keep trying to change the name. And no, they do call it the White Council. But Galadriel wants Gandalf to lead the council. And Gandalf, sensing a fight...
I will hold my breath until you make me the leader.
Gandalf, sensing a fight, declines and says it should be Saruman. He's the leader of our order. But there is one other detail that makes this whole conversation, especially, you got to keep in mind, Frodo is much sassier. He's demanding to know how long Gandalf knew. Okay, when did you figure it out? And Gandalf is like, just now, Frodo, you saw the writing on the ring as same as I did. And Frodo is understandably pissed. He's not really hiding it. He's angry and he's freaking out. And he's like, why would you let me take this? Why would you not stop me from carrying this soul-eating ring around all the time, Gandalf? It's in my pocket right now. I wear it on a chain. It's chained to me, Gandalf.
17 years, Gandalf. It's been eating my soul for 17 years.
I'm not making this up. I know I exaggerate sometimes, but he does ask these questions of Gandalf. He asks, what about Bilbo? Is he okay? Is
he dead now?
Is he dead? Is his soul gonna be okay? Have we damned Bilbo for all eternity? And so Gandalf has to answer a lot of these questions, and that's kind of how in the movie this is the scene where Gandalf comes back and he's freaking out. And he's like, is it secret? Is it safe? We gotta go. You gotta go right the fuck now, Frodo. You gotta get out the door. You gotta pack all your shit. You don't have time for 2 bags. You gotta just pack all your shit. Sam, have you been dropping eaves? I'm gonna turn you into a toad. Get out there with Frodo. Well, go, 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 go. He shoves him out the door, and then he starts eating their food.
That was a deleted scene where he just picks back and starts eating their food.
But yeah, in the movie, this is it's also cut with scenes of the Black Rider saying Shire Baggins.
He decapitates a dude who just comes outside of the inn or something, and the Black Rider just cuts him to pieces for some reason.
Yeah, so in the movie, Frodo has to leave tonight because the Black Riders are on their way. In the book, they're enjoying a quiet breakfast.
Yes.
And Frodo will not leave for several weeks after this conversation. The danger is not nearly so immediate, so they have time to really get into this. And Frodo wants to, understandably. And there are a lot of books where I am very frustrated. American Gods, Pendragon, just to name a few, where people know the answers to the questions the protagonist has, and the writer can think of no better reason to not answer them than, I don't feel like it.
I've got 9 more books in this series. I need you to stick around.
But yeah, so Gandalf is interrogated. He has to sit down and answer these questions. And Frodo also wants to know, like you said, they're coming to the Shire. Why are they coming to the Shire, Gandalf? And Gandalf has to really get into it. So he has to get into the whole Gollum story. He has to get into the whole exposition of how the One Ring came to Frodo, how Isildur cut it from the hand of Sauron, and then eventually Isildur lost it and it stayed at the bottom of the river, and then Gollum found it. And
No, Deagle found it, but Smeagol was like, "It's my birthday," and
he gave it to me.
Strangled
It was a
him.
gift.
He gave it to me. It was a gift. No, my grandma gave it to me. Deagle wasn't even there. I don't know what happened to him. I think he just drowned.
We weren't even friends. I think he choked himself. He was in a really dark place. Yeah, so he has to get into all of that, and this is where they have the conversation. Frodo says, "Oh my God, this is a lot."
Yeah.
Gandalf says something about how, like, these things go in cycles, Frodo. Like, it's just we're in a period. We're in an interesting times, Frodo. And Frodo's like, I really wish it hadn't happened in my time.
I really wish that I were around in, say, the Clinton administration instead of 9/11, Gandalf. But okay. Oh yeah, I guess we did have a good old worldwide pandemic in our lifetime, and I was thinking of that scene.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
And already, Frodo, our time is beginning to look black. The enemy is fast becoming very strong. His plans are far from ripe, but I think they are ripening. We shall be hard put to it. We should be very hard put to it, even if it were not for this dreadful chance. The enemy still lacks one thing, Frodo. Silver linings.
Heart. Determination.
Kind of the strength and knowledge to beat down all resistance, break the last defenses, and cover the land into second darkness. He can't do that until he gets the ring that's in your pocket, Frodo.
Silver lining,
And until he does, it's the only thing he thinks about. And he's coming for you, Frodo. He doesn't sleep. He doesn't eat.
So
he's an angelic being, orders of magnitude more powerful than anything left in this world. And he's just thinking about you.
So he knows that, like, he didn't know that the ring was lost, but now he's like, holy shit, the ring is out there. I want me some of that ring, get all my power back. So does Sauron not realize that if the ring were destroyed, he's fucked?
He does realize that.
But he doesn't think they would actually destroy it, because that would be craziness.
Well, let's look at the reality. Sauron thinks that A, there's only one place you can destroy the ring, and I control it. So they'd have to get here. And even then, the nature of the ring is such that no one who has it could destroy it. And he's not wrong about that.
Yeah, even Frodo fails to destroy it at the last minute.
Well, Frodo fails to destroy it at the first minute, too, because that's another scene that's not in the movie, is Frodo's like, well, okay, we got this crazy ring, so what if I just chuck it?
Yeah.
What if we just destroy it? We'll hit it with a hammer. We'll throw it in a fire. And Gandalf's
like, did you not see that fire over there? We already threw it in a fire, buddy. It didn't do anything.
Gandalf's like, give it a shot. Throw it in the fire.
Oh, yeah, and he fails.
And Frodo goes to throw it in the fire, and he opens his hand to toss it, but he finds out he accidentally already put it back in his pocket.
Whoopsie.
And he's like, oh. And Gandalf's like, yep, it's already in your head. Frodo's like, thanks.
If you would have gotten here 17 years earlier,
Yeah.
Gandalf.
Yeah, if you could have figured this out just a little bit quicker on your time scale, Gandalf. And he also mentions that nobody, and this is an interesting thing for the rest of the quest, nobody this ring has gotten a hold of could ever think of just getting rid of it.
Except one.
The only reason Bilbo got rid of it, quote unquote, was he gave it to somebody else he knew would keep it safe. Gandalf says Bilbo couldn't have thrown this on the side of the road and just walked away. Bilbo, the only reason he was able to give it away is because he knew the ring would be okay. It's like one of those parasites that takes over an ant's brain or something. The survival of the ring is more important than the survival of the Bilbo.
Yeah. I mean, the ring was done with Isildur. Was like, all right, I'm going to just slip off your finger. Now everyone sees you and arrowed to death.
Well, that's another thing Bilbo left in a note for Frodo. Watch this ring, keep it on a chain. It changes size and weight randomly. And Frodo has always kept it on a chain. Now, Frodo hasn't put the ring on yet, and that is a very good thing. Gandalf also hints, this is not in the movies, that the ring has this damning effect on your soul. But it's worse depending on the context you use the ring in. So Bilbo took the ring, and he did lie about it, he did steal it, but he then used the ring to save his friends and to annoy and frighten relatives at parties.
Yeah, he wasn't using it to dominate people.
He didn't dominate anyone. He didn't use it violently.
Unlike Gollum, who's going around stealing secrets and being an ass.
Gollum started
goblins.
He started his ownership of the ring with murder. He continued to use it for nefarious purposes. Gandalf explains that he used it to sow discord in his village. He would listen to people's secrets while he was invisible, and he would use it to start rumors about them. He would steal things. He would basically just be an asshole. And they eventually kicked him out, and then he got bitter, and he would use the ring to kill orcs, and it had this effect on him. But Gandalf has an interesting thought here in that Gollum still held up pretty well, all things considered. And Gandalf has a theory that hobbits, and because Gollum, now at this point, you remember the whole thing at the beginning about the Stewars and the Harfoots.
Yes, I definitely remember that.
So Gollum was probably of Stewar stock.
Yeah.
And so he was not very much unlike a hobbit. He has their same hardiness. And so he definitely didn't turn into a wraith. All things considered, he still had a pretty pleasant chat with Bilbo. He wasn't like a crazed murderer. And he still did the riddle game. And Gandalf even thinks that, like, the riddle game, you may think that doesn't really fit.
But it does.
But it does.
Quit adding me.
But it does if you think about it. So if Gollum was a hobbit, he would have the same sort of folk legends and riddles and such. And he and Bilbo, they both knew the ancient riddle game, and they had this exchange.
And they both accepted that what's in my pocket is a riddle and not a bullshit fake out.
There's something written about that. I forget where. I can't remember if it's in the letters or if it's in this very book. But it says those who are most knowledgeable about the riddle game have concluded that it was an unfair question. But by agreeing to answer it, Gollum allowed it to be in play.
Wow.
So it's like if in a tennis match you hit the ball out, but the other person returns it, it's not out of bounds. You keep playing. So that was Gollum's bad. Gollum asked for 3 guesses, and then it's valid. Now we're playing.
Damn.
He did have, but according to the ancient laws of the riddle game, he could have said, "That's a bullshit question."
Can you tell me?
What do I have in my pockets?
It's a bullshit question.
Does that mean that you can't answer it?
It's a bullshit question. It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
Your Honor, I move to disqualify Ms.
Gollum.
as an expert witness.
Well, guess now we know.
Now we know. So now you know that Riddles in the Dark very much fits in this universe. And
Quit writing me letters.
makes total sense. He was a hobbit all along. He was a hobbit the whole time. And Bilbo didn't turn into a weird cave monster because Bilbo didn't murder people with the ring.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
But seriously, though, Frodo, if you don't eventually get rid of that ring, you will turn into one of those monsters. It'll just take a long time. And trust me, you don't have a long time. I mean, you got a couple weeks. There's no rush. But, like, we should definitely get moving, this spring.
So, let me see. What?
By the way, Frodo then asks, how the hell do you know Gollum's entire backstory?
So first of all, that's what I was like, he's talking about it like he was there.
Yeah.
And so Gandalf is like, oh no, I mean, we found him. Like, we tracked him down. He was in the mountains for a few years. Then he finally he realized that he really wanted him that ring in some revenge more than he feared leaving his safe little lake. So he went out, he learned how to travel to avoid both the sun and the moonlight.
Umbrella.
There you go. I mean, easy. Just got a big leaf. So he
made it as far as Dale. Retracing
he made
Bilbo's
it all
footsteps.
the way to Dale. Yeah. And then he was coming back through, because they knew where Bilbo came from. He took all his treasure. He was going west. Gollum made it back west, I think, through Mirkwood again.
And that's where the elves started hunting him.
Yeah. And then Gollum is like, I'm going to get my friends to kick Bilbo's ass. And Gandalf, he just kind of, like Danny, forgot about the Iron Fleet, for a little bit.
Well, no, he says he wants to follow Gollum, but he does have other stuff to do. And
I've got shit to do.
And Saruman was pretty sure that the ring washed out to sea.
And that ring was lost long, long ago. It was swept out to sea by the waters of the Anduin.
He definitely said that in his magical deep vibrato. And
I wasn't looking at his hips at the time, so I didn't see that, he's kind of full of shit.
But Gollum heads back east. He heads to Mordor. And the reason he does that is because he held the ring for so long. He is attuned to Sauron to some extent. And Sauron is calling all of the evil back to him. He's calling the orcs. He's calling the trolls and the golems and the nameless things that I haven't thought of yet. And
maybe perhaps some sort of evil int. I don't know. We'll figure that out later. I was going to say that Aragorn is mentioned here as being one of the best, greatest ranger ever who helped Gandalf track down Gollum. And also Gandalf mentions that there was another force at work here and that Bilbo and Frodo were both meant to have the ring.
And Frodo does sort of take the tone with this of, yeah, that doesn't help.
Yeah, great. Is that force going to send some help? We're going to get a god on our side? No? All right.
Best I can do is eagles sometimes.
Deal.
So, you know how the Hobbit movies suck.
Always you must meddle, looking for trouble where none exists.
Let him speak.
And you know how a big part of that is that they were trying to stretch one book into 3 movies?
Yeah.
Well, what if you tried to stretch 3 pages into a movie? And what if you called it The Hunt for Gollum, directed by Andy Serkis, produced by Peter Jackson, coming out in 2026?
Why? Why? Did we not learn? So here's what I was about to say, Ben. Gollum goes to Mordor, and he's like, "Hey, you're my friends, my evil friends. How about you and me? We team up. We go kick this guy's ass and get my precious magic ring." And Sauron's like, "Magic ring? You say? Grab him. We're gonna torture him." And you know how Gollum endures all the torture until they put him in a shitty video game called Lord of the Rings Gollum, and that was too much for him. Yeah, wow, that is embarrassing. They should stop.
I have been told.
Why would they make this movie after the game was a flop?
Because no one involved in this movie plays video games.
Okay, that's fair.
Here's the thing. Andy Serkis. I really never thought any kind of way about him. I'm not as in love with his portrayal of Gollum as everybody else is. I think he kind of does the same thing in a lot of movies. I think he's a really good like motion capture guy, but like I've never been like, oh my God, Andy Serkis is in this? Well, then it's probably a cartoon is my reaction. But the one thing I will say for the guy is he has recently done an audiobook production of all of these, the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, the Silmarillion.
Okay.
And it's really good. Like he obviously put in a ton of effort. We can say at a bare minimum, he's read all the books. He has spent a lot of time with them. He gets all the pronunciation right. He's familiar enough with the material to put the emotion where it should be. Like, I think I can't question his like Lord of the Rings street cred for sure. I mean, like he definitely knows this stuff as well as I do. But oh boy, I have been told to keep an open mind about this movie. I don't know, guys. This, I don't want it. I don't want it.
Why are we doing it? I know how it ends, and it doesn't change the greater story.
For Andy Serkis, he hasn't directed a lot of stuff. This would be his probably biggest movie he's directed. And I don't know anything about his directing. I haven't seen his other movie. And for Peter Jackson, it would be another paycheck. I mean, maybe he can pay the New Zealand government to let him whip the union this time. Maybe they can just tie them to a pole in the town square and Peter Jackson can just whip them.
And that could be the B roll,
I don't want it. But that's, I mean, it is what it is. If you want it, well, you're going to get it. Look, I can't stop it. I mean, if I could, I would. Believe me, I would. But I can't stop it. So if you want it, you're going to get it. And I'm going to have to endure its existence. And that should be victory enough for you.
So, because Gollum was tortured, he spilled all the beans after being put in that video game. And then they were like, we're going to make a movie out of this. And Gollum he couldn't take it anymore. And told him all about the Shire, a guy named Baggins. And
he tried to go the way of Deagle, choking himself to death, but he just couldn't. They had his hands tied.
So now the enemy knows of the One Ring in a place called the Shire, possessed by a guy named Baggins, and they also know his social security number and a list of his fears.
The sun and the moon.
So, and then Frodo's like, God, I really hate that Gollum. I wish Bilbo would have just like murdered him in cold blood. And Gandalf is like, Jesus Christ, dude, what the fuck?
And Frodo's like, I'm sorry, Gandalf, I'm having a moment. You just told me I'm going to die, and I might have my soul torn apart as well. Am I not allowed to wish for the death of my enemy, the one guy who ratted me out?
Well, no, because he might be important later on in the story. Put that in your back pocket. He might be important when this is all said and done,
But I think the difference here then is emphasis. So he tells Frodo, like, he tells him that line about pity stayed Bilbo's hand. You should actually be grateful and glad that Bilbo started his ring journey with pity and mercy, because if he had started it with killing Gollum, we're in a very different world right now.
We've got Dark Lord Bilbo, Lord of the Shire.
Well, at the very least, you don't own Bag End. That's for damn sure. You do not inherit Bilbo's vast fortune, and you are probably enslaved to an orc army, because Bilbo would have been captured immediately. I would have been killed in Dol Guldur, and no fireworks then. What about that?
That's the real thing. You would have a shitty drone show that wouldn't even get off the ground, Frodo. Is that what you want?
He also adds that, like, look, Gollum, he's still going. Like, the ring's power has sustained him even now. He's pretty spry, but he is old and he is miserable. I think I have given you, Nate, this same advice about people you've complained about, where
Is
it's
that
like,
we should perhaps elect him as president?
God no. No, I have told you, like, look, he's not having a good time. Whatever this guy is, like, people like that, they're miserable. So Gollum is like, if you saw him, Frodo, you'll never have to see him because the wood elves have him in prison, and they always will.
Imagine that. The wood elves imprisoned Gollum. Who would have thought? Who could have seen that coming? Is what my notes say.
He had the jail cells. Gollum found, like, the note Thorin was here. Yeah, the Wood Elves have him in prison, so you'll never have to see him. But if you did see him, Frodo, I think you'd feel bad for him because he is pathetic.
And then he mentions that we have to throw. So he doesn't call it Mount Doom. He calls it Orodruin. Orodruin. I didn't realize it had a name. I thought it was just Mount Doom.
No, it's the Cracks of Doom in Orodruin.
Okay.
Orodruin.
He's also like, Dragonfire might be able to melt it, but we're all out of dragons. Whoops.
That's not what he says. What he says is, there is no dragon yet alive. There is no dragon still alive. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There's no dragon still alive in whom the old fire burns hot enough.
Would Smaug have been able to do it?
No, Smaug is a relatively young.
So it could only have been Calagan the Black.
And Calagan the Black. And I don't know why you would even put the emphasis on those syllables. That's it's not Ankalagan. It's in Calagan the Black. We've actually talked about him before.
And Calagan the Black.
And even he could not destroy the One Ring.
Oh my god.
But he could destroy the Great Elven Rings. And I'm not going to and the thing I know, being on like a second read, more than a second read, the thing I know that Frodo doesn't is that Gandalf is like wearing a Great Elven Ring right now. And unlike Frodo's ring, Gandalf's is just awesome. It gives him control over fire, maybe. It keeps him energetic and never tiring from the quest. It allows him to inspire the hearts of men. And yeah, it's just awesome. It's awesome all the time. And by the way, I think Saruman legit knows he has it, and he's pissed. Because when they got off the boat, the Círdan, the shipwright, he pulls Gandalf specifically aside, and he's like, hey man, I want you to have this. This is my great ring of power. It actually was worn originally by the Elven king Gil-galad, who died in the war against Sauron, where Isildur cut off his finger. And it's really important. I really want the best wizard to have it. You know what I'm saying? So you take this. You're going to need it. Also, Elrond has one and Galadriel has one, if you were wondering.
Oh, I already knew that. But yeah, and Saruman's like, what was that about? What happened there?
I'm getting married. And believe it or not, Saruman bought that for like 500 years. We had a real Three's Company situation going on.
So I think that there's one thing I wanted to bring up because I don't remember if we talked about it on the podcast, and even if we did, that was a whole book ago. The ring would corrupt you, but like you could use it against Sauron. Someone who's strong enough could do that. We would just have, another Dark Lord. It doesn't solve our problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Gandalf could use the ring, and Gandalf conceivably is a being who could, with the power of the ring, overthrow Sauron. But then Gandalf would become a new Dark Lord, possibly more powerful than Sauron himself. I think the same could be said of Galadriel. If she took the ring, she could probably overthrow Sauron. For those who don't know, I think Galadriel may be the oldest elf in Middle-earth to have seen the light of Valinor. And she is currently in exile. We'll talk about that more when we get to the Galadriel chapter, because Galadriel is not allowed back in Valinor.
Not after the last time,
Not after the first kinslaying.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so Frodo's plan is clear. He don't want this ring, but it's kind of thrust upon him. He's going to protect the ring. He's got to leave the Shire, because otherwise the Shire is going to be burned to the ground trying to get the ring. And then
might get burned to the ground anyway. Who knows? Depends if you're watching the movie or reading the book.
Yeah, exactly. And then he is going to find someone more courageous than he is to take the ring when he's done possessing it.
One other note that's different from the movie is Gandalf touches the ring.
Yes.
Gandalf grabs it and holds it up. It's in the books. It's not like in the movies. I understand why they did this. They really have to communicate how dangerous the ring is. But in the books, you don't have the power of the ring unless you take possession of it. So like if the ring wraiths, because this is another thing where the movie changes something, and it works for the movie as long as you don't think about it. Because like Sauron isn't, well, first off, in the movies, I don't even think you're meant to think Sauron has a body. He does.
No, you're meant to think he's a fucking eye monster. So I read this a year or two before the movies came out. I watched the movies, completely forgot that Sauron has legs and can walk around and shit. I thought he was a fucking eye monster.
Sauron, okay, in the books, Sauron has a body. Gollum has seen it. And Gollum comments that it is still missing the ring finger that Isildur cut off.
Well, there you go. We can't lose now. He doesn't have a finger to wear the ring upon. Checkmate.
The ring changes sizes. He could put it on any finger.
Fuck.
Yeah, he thought of that.
So if we just cut off his hands, we win.
Toes.
Damn it.
Look, he can get that ring on. But the point is, he can't regenerate that part of his body. And he should be able to regenerate. He should be able to take on his shape as he wants. That is his power as a Maya. But the consequence of that change in the movie is that it doesn't really make sense that Sauron isn't coming to collect the ring himself. So like a servant has to take the ring, right? If the ring wraiths find Frodo and they kill him, they then have to take the ring to Sauron. But they'll be touching the ring. Like, should they?
Yeah, wouldn't they just become Sauron and overthrow him?
Yeah, no, because
I'm the new Dark Lord now, bitch.
No, because they're not going to take possession of it. It belongs to Sauron. In their minds, it belongs to Sauron. So that's what it means. You have to own the ring. You have to claim ownership of the ring for the ring to work. Which is also why Frodo is kind of pissed at Gandalf in this scene, because like, I didn't have to take it. If you'd told me this 17 years ago, I would have said no thank you. Bilbo.
No, thank you, Bilbo. You just keep it, all right?
Give it to the Sackville Baggins. Instead of a Dark Lord, you would have a queen. Petty as the day is long.
So the chapter ends with Frodo is a little bit excited. He's going to follow after Bilbo. He's going to be Mr. Underhill, and
I'm
Gandalf.
picturing Frodo like putting on sunglasses and a cape and like, I'm Mr. Underhill.
Gandalf is
Yeah.
like, you've got to choose your companions wisely. Wait a minute, what's that? What the fuck is this guy doing outside the window? Samwise Gamgee.
I was just about to say you've got to choose your companion Sam wisely.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
And I was going to ask because Samwise says, "Lord bless me," and I'm like, "Who the fuck is Lord?" That just means Lord. I looked that
means
up.
Lord. Yeah.
So there you go.
He's talking with an accent. He's not a cultured man, Samwise.
Well, Sam, your punishment is you have to follow Frodo.
In the movie, they kind of get this scene right where like Sam is like initially very scared and he's like, don't turn me into anything. And they tease him a little and pretend they will. But like Gandalf low-key knows Sam wants to go. And Sam has been like dreaming about seeing the elves and going on adventures for a long time. And so Sam's like really the only one excited about this.
Hell yeah, Dark Lord, magic rings, let's fucking go.
It gets it done.
I won't have to do gardening anymore? Hell yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of like, yeah. Because I was thinking about this, right? And like, they're talking about the whole time this is going, Sam, they can hear his shears going. And then eventually when the story gets really juicy, the shears stop. And that's, of course, Sam is now just like at the window looking in. But I'm sitting there thinking about this and I've never considered it. I have no idea how one trims grass.
Was he trimming grass?
He was trimming grass.
Oh, that's weird.
Without a lawnmower. How
That's
did they even
weird.
do that? This is me. Like,
I
what was
thought they'd
that thing
just
you
use a
did? Like,
push
you
mower.
didn't know how they did toast without a toaster. And I'm sitting here like, how do you mow grass without a lawnmower? Because they don't even have one of those wheelie blade things.
Yeah,
That
the
couldn't
push
have come
mowers.
until later. That couldn't have come until later.
But I guess this is a thing of like, usually only the wealthy had like lawns. So like,
But you think about it, like some of these places,
I
like,
want you to personally trim. Like, that's your job today. You've got 8 hours. I want you to trim every blade of grass to a half an inch.
that's insane.
Yeah.
I too would rather hike to the cracks of Mount Doom with a goblin creature who might kill me in my sleep than trim the garden by hand. Like, Sam's life makes so much more sense to me now.
All right. Any final thoughts on this this chapter?
Nah, it's a lore dump. We'll be revisiting a lot of this stuff. I honestly don't. I didn't want these episodes to keep coming out this long, but he packs so much in.
Yeah, like I said, I took how many pages? Between the two, it was 4 pages, or yeah. But this chapter was a solid about 3 pages, 3.5.
This is a big lore dump, and I think definitely like on a first read, I don't think I got a lot out of this because he throws a lot of names at you: Gilgalad, Isildur, Aragorn, and Calagon the Black, Sauron. He's just throwing names, but like once you know who all those people are and how they relate to this story, it's like, wow, that early they were in there. So I think it's cool. But yeah, we'll end it there. Next time we'll talk about chapter 3. Frodo's going to set out. Partner in crime and life, perhaps, maybe. Samwise Gamgee.
He ruins it by getting married.
The road goes ever on and on, down from the door which began. Now far ahead the road is gone, and I must follow it, if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet. And whither then, I cannot say.